The Aliel were dying, not slowly, not quietly, but in fire and screaming in the cold silence of space. Their worlds burned one by one, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Ambassador Lyral stood before the Galactic Council, her silver skin dim with exhaustion. She had not slept in 4 days. She had not eaten in 2. Her forearms hung at her sides, trembling with fear and hope and desperation. "Please," she said. Her voice was soft, but the chamber was silent, so everyone heard. "The Wrath have taken 9 of our 12 worlds. They kill without mercy. They destroy without reason. We are a peaceful people. We have no army. We have no weapons. We have only our children and our elders and our hopes for tomorrow." She paused. The council members watched her with careful, distant eyes. They were representatives of powerful species, ancient civilizations that had conquered the stars long before the Aliel learned to build their first telescope. "We beg you," Lyral continued, "send us fighters, send us soldiers, send us anyone who can hold a weapon and stand between our people and death." The chamber remained silent. The Krellian delegate looked away. The Vosari representative studied her notes. The Mendari ambassador coughed quietly and pretended to check his communication device. No one spoke. Lyral felt her heart sink, both of them beating fast and afraid in her chest. She had known this might happen. The Wrath were too powerful, too brutal, too terrifying. No species wanted to make an enemy of them. "The Aliel petition is noted," the council chairman said. His voice was flat and official and cold. "We will take it under consideration." That meant no. Everyone knew it meant no. Lyral closed her eyes. She thought of her daughter, only 7 years old, hiding in a shelter on Aliel Prime. She thought of her mother, too old to run, waiting in the capital city for news that might never come. She thought of her people, gentle and kind and completely unprepared for war. "We will send fighters." The voice came from the back of the chamber. It was small and unimportant, from a section reserved for minor species, new civilizations that had barely earned their seats at the galactic table. Everyone turned to look. A human stood there. He was short by galactic standards, with brown skin and dark hair, and eyes that seemed to hold something strange, something the other species could not quite name. "Earth offers its assistance," the human said. "We will send fighters to defend the Aliel." The council chairman made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Earth? Your species achieved faster than light travel less than 50 years ago. You have no fleet. You have no experience. What could you possibly offer against the Wrath Dominion?" The human smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We have experience," he said, "just not the kind you're familiar with." The chamber erupted in whispers and murmurs. Some delegates laughed openly. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The Wrath observer in the corner made a note on his tablet, dismissing the humans as a minor annoyance. But Lyral looked at the human representative, and she saw something in his eyes. Something old and dark and patient. Something hungry. 3 weeks later, the transport ship Pale Horse dropped out of faster-than-light travel above Aliel Prime. It was not an impressive ship. It was old and battered and covered in strange markings that the Aliel could not read. One of the markings showed a skeleton riding a horse. Another showed a mushroom cloud. A third simply said, "No refunds" in human script. Ambassador Lyral waited at the landing bay with a formal welcoming committee. She had prepared speeches and ceremonies and gifts. The Aliel were a proper people, and they would show proper gratitude to their saviors. The cargo doors opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Lyral expected soldiers in clean uniforms, standing in neat rows, saluting their hosts with military precision. What she got was something else entirely. The first human out of the ship was a woman with scars on her face and arms. She wore armor that did not match, pieces taken from different sets, and held together with tape and determination. She had a cigarette in her mouth, which she lit as she walked down the ramp. Behind her came others. Men and women, young and old, tall and short. They wore no uniforms. They carried weapons that the Aliel did not recognize. They talked and laughed and pushed each other like children on a field trip. One of them was eating something from a bag. Another was playing music from a small device. A third was already looking around the landing bay with sharp, calculating eyes, as if measuring distances and angles. The scarred woman reached the bottom of the ramp and stopped. She looked at Lyriel. She looked at the welcoming committee. She took a long drag from her cigarette and blew smoke into the recycled air. "I'm Sergeant Yuna," she said. "These are my people. 200 of us, give or take. Some of us are soldiers. Some of us are criminals. Most of us are both." She cracked her knuckles and the sound echoed in the silent bay. "So, where are these Vrath bastards? We've been bored." Lyriel did not know what to say. She had prepared for many things, but not this. "Sergeant," she managed, "we are grateful for your assistance. The Aliel Confederacy welcomes you and—" Yeah. Yuna waved a hand. "We'll do the welcome party later. Right now I need 3 things. Maps of Vrath positions, access to your supply depots, and someone to point me at the enemy." She smiled again, that predator smile. "We didn't come all this way to make friends. We came to make corpses." Behind her, the other humans cheered. One of them fired a weapon into the air, which made the Aliel guards dive for cover. "Sorry about Dohuan," Yuna said, not sounding sorry at all. "He gets excited." The human named Dohuan grinned and waved. He was young, maybe 25 years old, with messy hair and a face that seemed permanently amused. He carried more explosives on his body than most military units used in a year. "I like your planet," Dohuan said to Lyriel. "Very pretty, very flammable looking." Lyriel felt a new emotion growing in her chest. It was not hope exactly. It was something stranger and more complicated. It was the feeling of standing next to a fire that might burn the house down or might keep you warm. You did not know which until it was too late. She looked at Sergeant Yuna, at the scarred face and the cold eyes and the easy confidence of someone who had seen death many times and never blinked. "Sergeant," Lyriel said slowly, "what exactly did Earth send us?" Yuna took another drag from her cigarette. "The Galactic Council asked that question too," she said. "The answer is simple, Ambassador. You asked for fighters. Terra sent you something better." She dropped the cigarette and crushed it under her boot. "Terra sent you people with nothing to lose and everything to prove. People who fight not because they have to, but because they want to." She leaned closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Terra sent you its monsters, Ambassador. And trust me, the Vrath have never met anything like us." Commander Tessic had served in the Aliel Defense Corps for 30 years. He had seen many things. He had studied military tactics from 12 different species. He had read books on strategy, on discipline, on the proper way to wage war. Nothing had prepared him for the humans. The briefing room was large and clean and filled with advanced holographic displays. Tessic had spent 2 days preparing his presentation. He had charts and maps and detailed analysis of Vrath tactics, formations, and weaknesses. The humans were not paying attention. Private Dewan sat in the front row, eating something from a bag. The crunching sound filled the room every few seconds. When Tessic glanced at him, Dewan smiled and offered him some. "Chips," Dewan explained. "Want some?" "No, thank you." Tessic turned back to his display. "As I was saying, the Vrath typically deploy in triangular formations, with heavy units at the—" "Question." A woman in the middle row raised her hand. Her name was Corporal Unji, and she was sharpening a blade on a small stone. The scraping sound set Tessic's teeth on edge. "Yes," he said. "How many Vrath are we talking about? On the planet, I mean." Tessic checked his notes. "Approximately 12,000 ground troops, supported by air units and—" "Cool." Unji went back to sharpening her blade. "Just wanted to know how many there were." Tessic stared at her. "Corporal, there are only 200 of you." "Yeah." She held up the blade, checking its edge. "So we'll each have to kill 60. That's not so bad." The other humans nodded like this was normal and reasonable. Tessic felt a headache forming behind his eyes. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should discuss defensive positions. The Aliel have prepared bunkers and—" "No bunkers," Sergeant Yuna spoke from the back of the room. She had her boots up on the seat in front of her, which was disrespectful, but somehow appropriate. "We don't defend. We attack." "Attack?" Tessic's voice went high. "Sergeant, the Vrath have superior numbers, superior firepower, and superior everything." Yes, we know. Yuna lit another cigarette. The smoke curled toward the ceiling. That's what makes it interesting. Lieutenant Jisoo, who had been studying a datapad, looked up. She was quieter than the others, with sharp eyes and a thin smile that never seemed to reach them. Commander, I've reviewed your intelligence on Vrath supply lines. There's an outpost at Velar 7. Small garrison, maybe 300 troops. It guards a mining facility. That outpost is heavily defended, Tessic said. Our analysts believe it would take. We'll hit it tomorrow. Jisoo went back to her datapad. I'll need transport for 50 troops and authorization to access your weapons depot. Tessic opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Lieutenant, with respect, you cannot simply... Commander. Yuna stood up. She was not tall, but something about the way she moved made her seem bigger than she was. We appreciate the welcome. We appreciate the information. But we didn't come here to sit in bunkers and wait for death. That's not how humans fight. She walked to the holographic display and studied the map of Vrath positions. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in details, calculating distances. The Vrath think they're predators, she said softly. They think we're prey. That's their mistake. She pointed at the outpost. Tomorrow we show them what happens when the prey bites back. The attack on Outpost Valar 7 began at dawn. The Vrath garrison woke to explosions. Not small explosions, massive, earth-shaking blasts that turned their defensive walls into rubble and dust. Private Dewan had spent the night crawling through mining tunnels, planting charges at structural weak points. When asked later how he knew where to put them, he shrugged and said, "Buildings want to fall down. You just have to ask nicely." Corporal Unji led the first assault team through the breach. She moved like water, flowing around obstacles and through enemy formations. Her blade, the one she called diplomacy, drank deep that morning. She was singing as she fought, an old song, soft and sweet, about flowers blooming in spring. The Vrath found this deeply disturbing. Specialist Tayson followed with a support team, his helmet camera streaming live to a network he had set up before the mission. Humans across Earth watched in real time as he cleared room after room, providing cheerful commentary. "And that's 3 more down," he said, stepping over bodies. "For those keeping count at home, that puts me at 17. Yunji is still ahead with 22, but I'm closing the gap." Medic Heen moved through the chaos, treating wounded soldiers and keeping them in the fight. She was small and calm and seemed completely unbothered by the death around her. When a piece of shrapnel caught her in the arm, she removed it herself, bandaged the wound, and continued working. "Just a scratch," she told Tayson's camera. "I've had worse at family dinners." Sergeant Yuna directed the battle from a position near the center. She did not shout or wave her arms. She spoke quietly into her communication device, moving pieces across the board like a chess master. "Dewan, North Tower, now." "Yunji, pull back to position 2. Jisoo, the commander is trying to run. 3rd building, ground floor." Lieutenant Jisoo found the Vrath commander hiding in a storage room. He was bigger than her, covered in armor, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. He died anyway. By noon, the outpost had fallen. 300 Vrath soldiers, killed or captured. Human casualties, 7 wounded, 0 dead. Commander Tessic arrived with reinforcements that afternoon. He walked through the ruined outpost, past bodies and debris, and burn marks on the walls. "How?" he asked Yuna. "How did you do this?" Yuna was sitting on a pile of rubble, eating something from a container. It smelled strange and delicious, like meat and smoke and spices. "Barbecue," she said, offering him some. "Want to try it?" "I want answers, Sergeant." Yuna chewed slowly, swallowed, looked at him with those cold, patient eyes. "You want to know our secret, Commander? Fine, I'll tell you." She stood up, brushing dust from her armor. "Humans don't fight fair. We never have. We fight to win, and we don't care how we do it." She gestured at the ruined base. "The Vrath expected us to follow rules, to form lines and march into their guns, like good little soldiers. Instead, we snuck in at night. We blew up their walls. We attacked from every direction at once." Tessic shook his head. That's not how war is conducted." "Says who?" Yuna smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "The people who wrote the rules? Let me tell you something about rules, Commander. They're written by winners to keep others from winning the same way. She stepped closer, and her voice dropped low. The Vrath have been winning for a long time. They think they know what war looks like. They think they understand violence. She laughed softly. They don't. Not yet. But they will. She walked away toward the transport ship where her soldiers were celebrating. Commander Tessic stood alone in the ruins of Outpost Velar 7. He looked at the destruction, at the bodies, at the strange efficiency of human violence. For the first time since the war began, he felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. Terrible, frightening hope. Supreme Commander Gorath had conquered 47 worlds. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed fleets, and broken the spirits of species far older and more powerful than the Aliel. His name was whispered in fear across half the galaxy. He stared at the report on his desk and felt, for the first time in his long life, something cold crawling up his spine. This cannot be correct, he said. His aide, a young officer named Vorath, shifted nervously. The data has been verified, Supreme Commander. 3 times. Gorath read the report again. Outpost Velar 7, fallen. 300 soldiers, dead or captured. Human casualties. None killed, 7 wounded. They are primitives, Gorath said slowly. They barely have spaceflight. How did they? We do not know, Supreme Commander. Vorath pulled up additional files. We have collected what intelligence we could. The humans do not fight like other species. Explain. Vorath swallowed hard. They attacked at night, which is unusual. Most species prefer daylight engagements for better coordination. The humans used explosives in non-standard ways, targeting structural weaknesses rather than defensive positions. He hesitated before continuing. And they seemed to enjoy it, Supreme Commander. Gorath looked up sharply. Enjoy it. One of them was streaming the attack, broadcasting it live to their home planet. Millions of humans watched the battle like entertainment. The cold feeling spread through Gorath's chest. He had seen many things in war. He had never seen a species treat combat as a spectator sport. What else? Vorath checked his files. Their medic performed surgery on herself during the fighting. A blade specialist was singing while killing our soldiers. Their explosives expert has been identified as a former criminal, released from prison specifically for this mission. They send criminals to fight their wars? It appears so, Supreme Commander. Many of their soldiers have records of violence. They are not their best citizens. They are their most dangerous ones. Gorath stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Varath fleet orbited in perfect formation. Thousands of ships ready to crush any enemy. But enemies followed rules. Enemies made sense. These humans made no sense at all. Over the next 4 weeks, the reports grew worse. Outpost Karath fell, then Minos Station, then the garrison at Hollow Moon. Each time the pattern was the same. Impossible attacks, devastating losses, and humans who seemed to treat war like a game. Private Soman, the youngest of the human soldiers, was captured during a raid on Minos Station. She was 17 years old, small and quiet, with a face that seemed too innocent for war. The Vrath interrogators took her to a secure facility. They were experienced professionals, trained to break the strongest minds. 6 hours later, they released her. They refused to explain why. The interrogators who worked on her requested immediate reassignment. One of them resigned from the military entirely. When Somin returned to her unit, Sergeant Yuna asked what happened. Somin shrugged. I just talked to them. About what? Human history. They asked about our wars. Somin smiled, and it was not a young smile. I told them about the 30 Years' War, the Mongol conquests, the atomic bombs, the genocides. She paused. I told them what humans do to each other when we are angry. Yuna nodded slowly. And they let you go. They were very polite about it. The Vrath began to whisper about the humans. Not officially. Officially, the humans were a minor nuisance, easily defeated. But in barracks and mess halls and private communications, soldiers shared stories. They said the human medic could not be killed. They shot her and she kept fighting. They cut her and she stitched herself up and continued. She was not natural. They said the explosives expert could make anything burn. Give him rocks and water, and he would find a way to create fire. He laughed when things exploded. He laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. They said the blade specialist had names for her weapons. She talked to them like friends. She thanked them after battle, cleaning the blood from their edges with gentle care. They said Sergeant Yuna had challenged a battalion commander to single combat. When he refused, she had found him anyway. She came alone at night, through defenses that should have been impossible to breach. She left a message painted in his blood. Next time, accept the invitation. Supreme Commander Gorath called a council of his generals. They sat around a long table, looking at maps and reports and casualty figures. "We are losing," one general admitted. "Not the war. We still have superior numbers. But we are losing something else. Morale," another said. "The soldiers are afraid. They have never faced an enemy like this." "They are savages," a third general spat. "They have no honor. They do not follow the conventions of war." "Perhaps," Gorath said quietly. "That is why they are winning." The room fell silent. Gorath stared at the holographic map, at the blue dots representing human positions, spreading across Aliel space like a disease. "I have studied their history," he said. "The humans have been at war with each other for their entire existence. They have killed millions of their own kind. They have invented weapons capable of destroying their own planet, and then they built more of them." He stood and walked around the table, looking at each general in turn. "Do you understand what this means? They are not afraid of death. They are not afraid of destruction. They welcome it." His voice hardened. "They are broken, fundamentally damaged as a species, and that makes them more dangerous than anything we have ever faced." One general raised a hand. "Then what do we do, Supreme Commander?" Gorath returned to his seat. He thought for a long moment before answering. "We cannot defeat them in traditional combat. They do not play by our rules, and they never will." He pulled up a classified file on the main display. "So we must use unconventional methods." The generals looked at the file. Several of them went pale. "The Extinction Protocol?" one whispered. "That weapon is forbidden. If the Galactic Council learns—" "The Council has done nothing," Gorath cut him off. "They did not help the Aliel. They will not help us. And when the humans are gone, there will be no one left to complain." He activated the file, revealing specifications for a biological weapon designed to target specific species. "We will create a plague," Gorath said, "one that affects only humans. We will release it on Aliel Prime, where most of them are stationed, and within weeks every human in the sector will be dead." The generals exchanged uneasy looks. This was not war. This was extermination. But what choice did they have? The humans could not be defeated. They could not be controlled. They could not be reasoned with. They could only be destroyed. "Begin production immediately," Gorath ordered. "I want the weapon ready within 30 days. He turned back to the map, to the blue dots that haunted his dreams. "Enjoy your victories, humans," he murmured. "They will be your last." Far away on Aliel Prime, Sergeant Yuna lit a cigarette and looked up at the stars. She did not know about the Extinction Protocol. She did not know about the weapon being built to destroy her species, but she felt something, deep in her gut, a hunter's instinct, warning her that the game was about to change. She smiled and blew smoke at the sky. "Come on, then," she whispered. "Show me what you've got." The Crimson Guard had never lost a battle. In 400 years of warfare, they had crushed every enemy they faced. They were the elite of the Varath military, selected from millions of candidates, trained in every form of combat, equipped with the finest weapons in the galaxy. When Supreme Commander Gorath deployed them to Aliel space, he expected the human problem to end quickly. He was wrong. The Crimson Guard arrived at Kareth Prime with 5,000 soldiers, heavy armor, and air support. Their commander, General Therak, broadcast a message to the planet below. "Humans," he said, his voice cold and confident, "you have caused inconvenience to the Dominion. This ends now. Surrender, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make you suffer." The response came from Sergeant Yuna, transmitted on all frequencies. "Thanks for the warning. We've been getting bored." Lieutenant Jisoo had organized what she called a betting pool before the battle. Each human soldier placed bets on kill counts, most creative takedown, and something called style points that no one could fully explain. Corporal Yunji had brought a second blade for this fight. She called it negotiation. Diplomacy for close work, she explained to Commander Tessic, who had insisted on observing the battle. Negotiation for when things get serious. Tessic did not know what to say to this. He was beginning to accept that humans operated on a level of reality he could not understand. Private Dowan spent the night before the battle preparing what he called party favors. These included mines hidden in unexpected places, tripwires connected to explosive charges, and something he referred to only as the surprise. When Tessic asked what the surprise was, Dowan just grinned. You'll see. The Crimson Guard landed at dawn. They moved in perfect formation, spreading across the battlefield with military precision. Their commander established a forward base and began methodical advancement toward the human positions. For 30 minutes, nothing happened. General Terra grew impatient. His sensors showed human signatures scattered across the city, but no defensive lines, no fortifications, no organization. They're hiding, one of his officers suggested, waiting for us to come to them. Theric smiled. Then let us not disappoint them. All units advance. Flush them out. The Crimson Guard moved into the city. They cleared buildings, swept streets, and searched every corner. The humans seemed to have vanished. Then Private Dowan launched himself from a rooftop. He landed directly on top of General Theric's personal transport, a heavily armored vehicle designed to withstand artillery strikes. He was armed with an engineering hammer and nothing else. Hi, he shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm here for the party. Before anyone could react, he began smashing the transport sensor array with his hammer. Each strike sent sparks flying. He was laughing the entire time. Get him, Theric screamed. Get him off my vehicle. Soldiers turned to fire, but Dowan was already moving, jumping from the transport to a nearby building, then swinging through a window and disappearing inside. The explosion came 3 seconds later. Not from the building, from the transport itself, where Dowan had attached charges while pretending to simply cause chaos. General Theric survived, but his command vehicle did not. He emerged from the wreckage, armor scorched, dignity destroyed. Find him, he roared. Find all of them. The Crimson Guard spread out, hunting, and that was exactly what the humans wanted. Yunji hit them from the east, emerging from shadows with her blade singing. She moved through their formations like wind through grass, cutting and slicing and vanishing before they could respond. She was singing again, that same soft song about flowers in spring. The Crimson Guard would hear that melody in their nightmares for years to come. Tyson's team hit from the west, using the city's infrastructure for cover. His live stream had reached 3 billion viewers across 12 species. Aliens who had never heard of Earth watched as humans fought the galaxy's greatest warriors and made it look easy. And that's another one down, Tyson announced cheerfully, ducking behind cover as plasma fire scorched the wall above him. Remember to like and subscribe, folks. And if you're enjoying the stream, consider donating to the Aliel Refugee Fund. Medic Heian moved through the chaos, treating wounded soldiers, keeping them in the fight. When she ran out of medical supplies, she improvised with whatever was available. A Crimson Guard soldier cornered her in an alley. He was twice her size, covered in armor, armed with weapons designed to kill tanks. Heian looked at him calmly. You're hurt, she said, pointing at a wound on his arm. That looks infected. You should really get that treated. The soldier stared at her, confused by her complete lack of fear. Heian used that confusion. She moved fast, precise, targeting nerve clusters and weak points in his armor. 3 seconds later, he was unconscious on the ground. She checked his wound before moving on. It really did look infected. Sergeant Yuna coordinated everything from a position near the center of the battle. Her voice was calm, almost relaxed, as she moved her soldiers like pieces on a board. Do Huan, they're sending reinforcements through the North Tunnel. Make them regret that. Yunji, there's a heavy unit at coordinates 7-7. Show them what negotiation can do. Jisu, the commander, is trying to regroup. Don't let him. Lieutenant Jisu found General Theric in a ruined building, surrounded by his personal guard. She did not attack directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, she waited until his guards were distracted by explosions elsewhere, then slipped through their lines like smoke. She appeared in front of Theric with a weapon aimed at his face. General, she said politely, You should surrender now, Theric laughed. One human against the supreme commander of the Crimson Guard? You are brave but foolish. Jisoo smiled. It was not a warm smile. I'm not alone, General. I'm just the one you can see. Theric's guards began dropping, one by one, hit by precision fire from positions they couldn't identify. Within 10 seconds, he was alone. The Crimson Guard has never lost, Theric said, his voice hollow. First time for everything. Jisoo lowered her weapon slightly. Surrender. Your soldiers will live. Keep fighting, and they won't. The Battle of Kareth Prime ended 2 hours later. The Crimson Guard, undefeated for 4 centuries, surrendered unconditionally. Vrath casualties, 3,000 dead, 2,000 captured. Human casualties, 12 wounded, 1 dead. Private Soman found the fallen human, a young man named Junho, who had been hit by artillery fire. She sat with his body for a long time, not crying, just sitting. When Yuna came to check on her, Soman looked up with dry eyes. He knew he might die, she said quietly. We all do, but he came anyway. Yuna nodded. That's what makes us different, Soman. We're not brave because we don't feel fear. We're brave because we feel it and fight anyway. That night, the humans held a ceremony for Junho. They built a fire. The Aliel were terrified since fire was dangerous on their world, and sat around it, sharing stories and drinking something called soju. Commander Tessic watched from a distance. He did not understand these strange, violent creatures who could kill with such efficiency and then mourn their dead with such tenderness. Sergeant Yuna found him standing alone. You should join us, she said, offering a bottle. I do not drink, Tessic replied. Then just sit with us. That's what matters. Tessic hesitated, then followed her to the fire. The humans made room for him, sharing food and drink and stories. They taught him a human word, barbecue. The meat was strange and delicious. The company was stranger still. But for the first time since the war began, Tessic felt like they might actually win. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Crimson Guard, undefeated for 400 years, had fallen, and they had fallen to humans, a species so primitive they had barely mastered spaceflight. Delegations arrived at Aliel Prime from every corner of civilized space. They came with questions, with offers, with demands. They wanted to understand how 200 humans had accomplished what no other species could. The Krellian ambassador was the first to request a meeting. Her name was Vora, and she had served in diplomatic positions for 3 centuries. She had seen empires rise and fall, witnessed wars that reshook the foundations of galactic civilization. Nothing had prepared her for what she found on Aliel Prime. She arrived at the human encampment expecting military discipline, strict protocols, and formal procedures. Instead, she found Private Dewan teaching Aliel children how to play something called tag. The children were screaming with delight, chasing each other through the camp, while Dewan encouraged them with shouts of, "Run faster! Don't let them catch you!" What is this? Vora asked Commander Tessic, who had been assigned to guide her. Tessic sighed. Human recreation. They teach our children games involving simulated violence. The children love it. This is violent? Apparently, the goal is to touch other players without being touched yourself. The humans call it training reflexes. Tessic shook his head. I have stopped trying to understand. Vora requested a formal interview with the human commanders. Sergeant Yuna agreed, though she insisted on eating lunch during the conversation. So, Yuna said, chewing something that smelled like meat and spices, what do you want to know? Vora had prepared a list of questions about human military doctrine, tactical philosophy, and strategic planning. She asked none of them. Instead, she asked, why did you come? Yuna stopped chewing. For a moment, her eyes went distant, looking at something Vora could not see. Because someone asked for help, she said finally, and because we're really good at this. At war? At surviving. Yuna took another bite. Humans have been killing each other since we climbed down from trees. We've invented more ways to cause death than any species in the galaxy. Wars, plagues, famines. We've done it all, and we're still here. She leaned forward, and her voice dropped low. The Vrath think they're predators. They think they understand violence, but they've only been fighting for a few thousand years. We've been doing it for millions. It's in our blood, Ambassador. It's part of who we are. Vora felt cold. That sounds terrible. It is. Una smiled, but it was a sad smile. We're not proud of it, but we've learned to use it. When the Aliel asked for help, we sent our best killers. Not because we wanted to, but because that's what they needed. After the interview, Vora walked through the camp, observing humans in their natural habitat. What she saw disturbed her deeply. She saw Corporal Yunji cleaning her blades while humming a gentle melody. The contrast between the deadly weapons and the peaceful song made Vora's skin crawl. She saw Medic Hien teaching Aliel medical staff about human physiology. The humans, it turned out, could survive injuries that would kill most other species. Their bodies were designed for damage, for pain, for survival at any cost. She saw specialist tastes in editing footage from recent battles, adding music and commentary like it was entertainment rather than death. And she saw Private Soman sitting alone, reading a book about human history. Vora approached her cautiously. "May I sit?" she asked. Soman looked up. She was young, barely an adult by human standards, but her eyes held something ancient and tired. "Sure." Vora sat beside her. "What are you reading?" "World War II. Soman showed her the book. "It was a conflict on our home planet, about 80 years ago, by our calendar." "What happened?" Soman was quiet for a moment. Then she began to explain. She told Vora about the Holocaust, about the atomic bombs, about the millions who died in battles across continents, in camps designed for murder, in cities burned to ash. She told her about the weapons humans had built, weapons capable of destroying their own civilization, their own planet, their own species. "We made them anyway," Soman said quietly. "We knew what they could do, and we built them anyway. That's what humans are, Ambassador. We're capable of incredible love and incredible hate. We can create beautiful things and destroy everything we touch." Vora stared at the young human. "How do you live with that knowledge?" Soman closed the book. "We just do. We wake up every day and choose to be better than our worst impulses. Sometimes we succeed. Sometimes we don't." She looked at Vora with those old, tired eyes. "But we keep trying. That's the only thing that separates us from monsters." The news of the extinction protocol reached Aliel Prime 3 days later. Lieutenant Jisoo received the intelligence from sources she refused to identify. She gathered the senior staff in a secure room and explained what the Vrath were planning. "A biological weapon," she said, her voice flat and controlled, "designed to target human DNA specifically. They plan to release it here, on Aliel Prime, where most of us are stationed." The room was silent. Even Dewan stopped fidgeting. "How long do we have?" Una asked. 20 days, maybe less. The weapon is being developed at a facility in Vrath space. Once it's complete, they'll deploy it via atmospheric dispersal. Can we stop it?" Jisoo pulled up a holographic map showing the Vrath Dominion. Deep in their territory, a single point glowed red. "The facility is here, buried beneath a fortress moon, protected by their entire home fleet. It's considered the most secure location in their empire." Sergeant Una studied the map. Her face showed nothing, but her hands were steady. "So we go there," she said simply. "Sergeant, that's suicide." Commander Tessick had been silent until now. "The Vrath home system is impenetrable. You would need an army, a fleet." "We have 200 soldiers and a stolen transport ship." Una smiled that predator smile. "That should be enough." The other humans nodded like this was reasonable. Tessick felt his understanding of reality crack a little more. "You're insane," he said. "Probably." Una turned to her officers. "Jisoo, I need every piece of intelligence on that facility. Weak points, guard rotations, supply schedules. Yunji, prep the assault team. We go in small and fast. Dowan." "Yeah? Bring everything." Dowan's face split into a grin that made Tessick uncomfortable. "Everything?" "Everything." That night, Private Soman found Una sitting alone, staring at the stars. She sat down beside her sergeant without speaking. "Are you scared?" Soman asked finally. Una was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed softly. "Terrified. I've been scared since this whole thing started. Scared I'll get my people killed. Scared we'll fail. Scared of what we might become if we win. Then why do it? Yuna looked at her youngest soldier. In the starlight, Soman looked even younger than her years. Because someone has to. Because if we don't stop them, they'll kill every human in the galaxy. And after that, they'll kill anyone else who stands up to them. She lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating her scarred face. We didn't start this war, Samin, but we're going to finish it. Samin nodded slowly. I'm scared too. Good. Fear keeps you alive. Yuna put a hand on her shoulder. But don't let it stop you. The bravest people I know are the ones who are terrified and fight anyway. They sat together in silence, watching the stars, preparing for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Tomorrow, they would fly into the heart of enemy territory with nothing but skill, luck, and an absolute refusal to die. It was, as Dowan would later say, going to be one hell of a party. The ship was called the Shadow's Edge. 3 weeks ago, it had been a Vrath cruiser assigned to supply runs. Now it belonged to the humans, stolen during a raid that Lieutenant Jisoo described as aggressive borrowing. The interior still smelled like Vrath, a musty odor that none of the humans could get used to. But it flew, and more importantly, its identification code still worked. As far as Vrath sensors knew, it was just another supply vessel making its way through their territory. Sergeant Yuna stood at the center of the cargo bay, looking at her soldiers. 150 of them. The rest had stayed behind to continue the fight on Aliel Prime. These were the best, the craziest, the ones who had volunteered for what everyone knew might be a one-way trip. I'm not going to lie to you, she said. This mission is probably suicide. The Vrath facility is buried under a fortress, surrounded by their home fleet and protected by defenses we can barely understand. She paused, letting the words sink in. We're going to destroy it anyway. No one laughed. No one cheered. They just nodded, the way humans did when accepting impossible odds. Operation Homecoming begins in 3 hours. We drop out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, then coast in on minimal power. The Fortress Moon is our target. We land, breach, destroy the bioweapon facility, and get out. What about extraction? Someone asked. Yuna smiled grimly. We'll figure that out when we get there. The 3 hours passed slowly. Some soldiers slept, trained by years of combat to rest whenever possible. Others checked their weapons, cleaned their armor, or wrote messages to loved ones they might never see again. Private Dowan spent the time organizing his explosives. He had enough firepower in his pack to level a small city, carefully arranged by size, yield, and what he called entertainment value. This one makes a big boom, he explained to anyone who would listen. This one makes a pretty boom. This one makes a boom you can feel in your bones. Corporal Unji sharpened her blades in silence. Diplomacy and negotiation gleamed in the dim light, edges sharp enough to cut through steel. She had added a third blade for this mission, a short knife she called Compromise. When do you use that one? Medic Hyen asked. Yunji considered the question. When I'm feeling generous. Lieutenant Jisoo reviewed the facility schematics one more time. She had memorized every corridor, every checkpoint, every possible escape route. Her mind worked through scenarios, calculating probabilities, planning contingencies. The bioweapon is stored in the lowest level, she told Yuna. Maximum security, biometric locks, armed guards. Once we're inside, we'll have maybe 30 minutes before they realize we're not supposed to be there. 30 minutes is plenty. Yuna checked her weapon, a hybrid rifle she had modified herself. We've done more with less. Specialist Tayson set up his streaming equipment with careful precision. His viewership had hit 15 billion across dozens of species, the most watched broadcast in galactic history. Ladies and gentlemen, he said into his camera, welcome to the show. Tonight we're going where no human has gone before, straight into the heart of the Vrath Dominion. If you're just joining us, you might want to grab some snacks. This is going to be a long one. Private Soman sat alone in a corner, reading her book on human history. She had reached the chapter about the fall of Berlin, the end of one war, and the beginning of a new world order. Sergeant Yuna found her there. How are you holding up? Soman looked up. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. I keep thinking about what happens if we fail. All those people back on Aliel Prime, all our people on Earth. She closed the book. If the Vrath release that weapon, millions will die, maybe billions. That's why we're not going to fail. How can you be so sure? Yuna sat down beside her. For a moment, she was not the scarred sergeant, the killer, the leader. She was just a tired woman carrying too much weight on her shoulders. I'm not sure, she admitted. I'm never sure. But I've learned that certainty doesn't matter as much as commitment. We're going in there with everything we have, and we're not stopping until it's done. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vrath home system. Immediately, they cut power to minimum, drifting on momentum and careful navigation. The fortress moon loomed ahead, a gray sphere bristling with weapon platforms and defensive structures. Around it, the Vrath home fleet, thousands of ships, patrolled in endless patterns. Beginning approach, the pilot announced. Estimated time to landing, 4 hours. 4 hours of silent drifting, hoping their stolen codes held, praying no one looked too closely at the supply ship that shouldn't be there. The humans waited in darkness, conserving power, barely breathing. And then they were through. The fortress moon filled the view screen, and landing lights guided them toward a cargo bay. They had made it. The infiltration team assembled at the cargo door. Yuna, Yunji, Dowan, Hien, Jisoo, and 12 others. The best they had. Remember, Yuna said quietly, speed and violence. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we don't stop moving. Questions? No one spoke. Then let's go kill some monsters. The cargo door opened, and they moved into the fortress. The first hour went smoothly. The humans moved through corridors like ghosts, avoiding patrols, bypassing security checkpoints, making their way deeper into the facility. Dowan disabled alarms with a combination of technical skill and creative destruction. Yunji handled guards who got too close, quietly, efficiently, leaving no witnesses. They reached the bioweapon laboratory at the 2-hour mark. The door was massive, reinforced with alloys designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Can you open it? Yuna asked Jisoo. Jisoo studied the lock panel. Give me 5 minutes. You have 3. While Jisoo worked, the others formed a defensive perimeter. They could hear movement in the distance. Guards responding to something, maybe a silent alarm they hadn't detected. Company coming, Yunji said softly. A lot of it. Dowan, slow them down. Dowan grinned and disappeared into the darkness. Seconds later, explosions echoed through the facility. Then more explosions. Then a massive blast that shook the walls. That should do it, he reported over the comm. But they know we're here now. The door slid open. Jisoo stepped back, breathing hard. We're in. The laboratory was cold and sterile, filled with equipment the humans didn't recognize. In the center, suspended in a containment field, floated canisters of pale liquid, the bioweapon. That's it, Hien said, scanning the containers. Modified pathogen designed to attack human cells specifically. 1 canister could kill everyone on a planet. How many canisters? 50. Yuna stared at the weapon designed to destroy her species. She felt anger, cold and hard, settling in her chest. Dowan, destroy it all. With pleasure. While Dowan planted charges, the others secured the room. Jisoo downloaded data from the computers, research files, deployment plans, everything she could grab. We have what we came for, she announced. Time to go. They made it halfway to the exit before the Crimson Guard found them. Not the regular forces, the Supreme Commander's personal unit, held in reserve for exactly this situation. They poured into the corridor, weapons blazing, overwhelming in their numbers. Unji met them head-on. Diplomacy sang through the air, cutting down the first wave. Negotiation followed, finding gaps in armor, silencing screams. But there were too many. Even Yunji couldn't hold them forever. Fall back, Yuna shouted. Dowan, blow the charges. The explosion was enormous, bigger than anything Dowan had done before. The bioweapon, the laboratory, and most of the lower facility disappeared in a ball of fire and destruction. The shockwave threw everyone to the ground. When Yuna looked up, the corridor behind them had collapsed. That's our exit gone, Jisoo said calmly. We need another way out. They fought through 3 more levels, leaving bodies behind them. Hien treated wounds on the move, keeping people fighting long past when they should have fallen. They lost soldiers. Minjin went down covering their retreat. Sora fell to enemy fire. Ji-Wan stayed behind to hold a corridor, buying time with his life. By the time they reached the landing bay, only 8 humans remained. But the bioweapon was destroyed. The mission was complete. "Get to the ship," Yuna ordered. "Move!" They ran across the open bay, fire raining down around them. The shadow's edge loomed ahead, engines warming up, ready to fly. Yunji was the last one up the ramp. She turned at the top, blades raised, ready to die if it meant the others escaped. But the ramp closed, the engines fired, and somehow, impossibly, they lifted off. Tyson's camera caught everything. 15 billion viewers watched as the shadow's edge broke through the atmosphere, dodged enemy fire, and made the jump to faster-than-light travel. They had done it, against all odds, against every prediction, against an enemy that should have been unstoppable. The humans had won. The Varath Dominion surrendered on the 47th day of the war. It was the first unconditional surrender in their species' history. Supreme Commander Gorath stood before the Galactic Council, his armor stripped, his pride broken, and formally acknowledged defeat. "The Varath Dominion cedes all claims to Aliel territory," he recited, each word cutting like a blade. "We agree to pay reparations for damage caused. We submit to Galactic Council oversight for a period of not less than 50 standard years." He paused, and for a moment, his eyes met those of the human representative in the chamber. "And we recognize humanity as a protected species under galactic law, with full membership rights in all interstellar organizations." The council chamber erupted in noise, applause from some, shocked murmurs from others. In the span of 2 months, humanity had gone from a primitive newcomer to one of the most feared species in the galaxy. On Aliel Prime, the celebrations lasted for 3 days. Ambassador Lyriel personally greeted each returning human soldier. There were fewer than when they arrived. 67 had died during the campaign, their names now carved into a monument at the center of the capital city. "You saved us," she told Sergeant Yuna. "You saved my daughter, my mother, my entire species. I do not have words for what you have done." Yuna stood stiffly, uncomfortable with gratitude. "We just did what needed doing." "No." Lyriel took her hands, all 4 of her arms wrapping around the human's rough, scarred fingers. "You did what no one else would. You fought for strangers, died for strangers, sacrificed everything for people you had never met." She looked into Yuna's eyes. "That is not ordinary. That is not normal. That is something wonderful." Yuna did not know how to respond. She was a soldier, trained for war, comfortable with violence. Kindness still surprised her. "Thank you," she managed, "for trusting us." The humans returned to Earth as heroes. Their ship landed at a military base surrounded by crowds. Millions of people who had watched the war unfold on Specialist Tyson's streams, who had celebrated victories and mourned losses alongside soldiers they had never met. Sergeant Yuna walked down the ramp into a wall of noise, cheering, crying, screaming, signs held high, bearing names of the fallen and messages of thanks. She raised a hand, and the crowd fell silent. "We lost 67 soldiers," she said, her voice carrying across the field. 67 men and women who died far from home, fighting for people they had never met. Remember their names. Honor their sacrifice." She paused. "And remember what we proved. Humanity is not weak. We are not primitive. We are not insignificant." Her voice hardened. "We are survivors. We have been forged by millions of years of war and struggle and pain. We carry that history in our blood." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. "Some species see that as a flaw. They think we are broken, damaged, dangerous." Yuna smiled. Not her predator smile, but something warmer. "They're right. We are dangerous. But we choose who we are dangerous to." She looked out at the sea of faces, human and alien alike. "We chose to fight for the Aliel. We chose to stand against tyranny. We chose to be the monsters that protect the innocent from other monsters." Her voice softened. "That is who we are. That is who we will always be." The crowd erupted again, louder than before. But Yuna was already walking away, disappearing into the base where her remaining soldiers waited. They gathered in a small room, the survivors of 200 volunteers. Some were wounded, bandaged, still recovering from injuries sustained in the final battle. Others were physically whole, but carried wounds that would never fully heal. "So," Dowan said, breaking the silence, "what do we do now?" No one answered immediately. They had spent months fighting, surviving, watching friends die. The sudden peace felt strange, almost uncomfortable. "We rest," Yuna said finally. "We heal. We find out who we are when we're not killing things." "That sounds boring," Yunji noted. "It probably will be." Yuna smiled slightly. "But we've earned boring, all of us." Over the following months, the humans of the Aliel campaign scattered across Earth and beyond. Sergeant Yuna retired to a small farm in the countryside, far from cities and crowds and reminders of war. She planted vegetables, raised animals, and tried to learn what peace felt like. She lasted 3 months before accepting a position training the newly formed Galactic Defense Initiative. The galaxy, it seemed, was not done needing human expertise in violence. Lieutenant Jisoo disappeared into the intelligence community, her skills and connections making her invaluable to Earth's new role in galactic politics. Some said she was the most dangerous person in the sector. They were probably right. Specialist Tayson became the most watched content creator in 12-star systems. His streams from the war had changed galactic entertainment forever. And he parlayed that fame into a media empire. He donated half his profits to veteran support organizations and Aliel reconstruction efforts. Corporal Yunji opened a school teaching what she called diplomatic arts. Students came from across the galaxy to learn her techniques, not just combat, but discipline, focus, and the strange philosophy she had developed through years of violence. She still named all her weapons. She still thanked them after each use. Medicaean published a medical textbook that revolutionized trauma surgery across the galaxy. Her techniques, developed in the chaos of battle, refined under impossible conditions, saved millions of lives in the years that followed. Private Dowan was banned from 7-star systems for unauthorized demolition. He considered this a point of pride. Eventually, he found work as a mining consultant, using his expertise with explosives for construction rather than destruction. He still grinned the same way when things went boom. Private Soman, the youngest soldier in the unit, became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. She brought with her the same calm, thoughtful presence she had shown throughout the war, and the same old tired eyes that had seen too much. When asked about her qualification for the position, she simply said, "I understand what we are capable of, the good and the bad. Someone needs to make sure the galaxy sees both." Commander Tessic remained on Aliel Prime, working to rebuild his people's military into something that could defend them without human help. He kept a bottle of human alcohol in his office, a gift from Yuna, and sometimes drank a glass when he missed his strange, violent friends. Ambassador Lyral became the leading voice for human-Aliel cooperation. She traveled between worlds, building bridges, forging alliances, making sure the sacrifice of 67 soldiers would never be forgotten. And across the stars, a new saying spread among species who had once dismissed humanity as primitive and insignificant. Never ask humans for help. They might actually show up. It was a joke, but like all good jokes, it carried truth. Because humans were strange creatures. They killed each other, but also died for strangers. They created weapons of mass destruction, but also works of incredible beauty. They were capable of unspeakable cruelty and breathtaking kindness. They were, in the end, exactly what the Aliel had needed. Monsters who chose to be heroes. 5 years after the war, Sergeant Yuna stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt Aliel capital. The city gleamed in the sunlight, a testament to recovery and hope. Beside her stood Soman, now Ambassador Soman, on a diplomatic visit between council sessions. "Sometimes I still can't believe we did it," Soman said quietly. Yuna lit a cigarette, a habit she had never managed to quit, and watched the smoke curl into the alien sky. "I can," she said. "We did what humans always do. We survived. We fought. We won." She glanced at her former soldier. "And then we went home and tried to figure out who we are when we're not fighting." "Did you ever figure it out?" Yuna was quiet for a long moment. "I think I'm still working on that," she admitted. "But I know one thing. We proved something during this war. Not just to the galaxy, to ourselves. What's that? Yuna dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her boot. That we're more than our worst impulses. That violence isn't all we're good for. That when it matters, when it really matters, humans can be something beautiful. She turned and began walking back toward the city, toward the celebration waiting for them. Come on, Ambassador, we've got a future to build. Soman watched her go for a moment, then smiled and followed. Behind them, the sun set over a world that had been saved by monsters who chose to be human. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species watched and wondered what humanity would do next. They were, everyone agreed, absolutely terrifying, but also maybe just a little bit wonderful.